where do you think, how and who do you think should regulate the content of the media?
Well, I'm personally very skeptical about any form of regulation of any kind of speech. Now, the media don't even begin to approximate freedom of speech. I mean, this is the kind of freedom where people who own the place set the rules. So that's not real freedom. Nevertheless, the idea of even in that kind of system, heavily skewed towards extreme wealth, personally, I'd be reluctant. I'm very reluctant to see any kind of regulation take place. Freedom of speech is a really important value. Over the centuries, particularly in the United States, won a lot of, won substantial freedom of speech, and I think we ought to preserve it. However, with regard to the media, I think there's a much more serious question. Should the media be democratized? I mean, if the media are institutions of private power, we can be quite sure that they're going to have a particular take on things. They're going to give a picture of the world which, by and large, reflects the interests of their owners and their advertisers and other centers of power in the society. And that means that the attitudes and points of view and interests of the general public are going to be marginalized. And I think the answer to that is not, regulation, it's democratization. The specific question of violence on the media is a hard one. I think you have to have a balance between, which is not easy to determine, between allowing full freedom of expression and imposing some restrictions on what people are exposed to. So, for example, even the most passionate advocate of freedom of speech does not believe that, say, I have a right to go into your living room and put up a pornographic poster or something. That's, you might say, my inability to do that's a restriction of freedom of speech, but I think everyone agrees with that. When you move to a, say, poster in Times Square saying, I don't know, some obscene thing or disgraceful thing, the issue becomes more complex because it's not really private space. It's just the space where you are. And the conflict between the right to private space and the right to freedom of speech begins to be ambiguous. When you go to the media, it becomes even more ambiguous. It's, in a sense, private space. I mean, that's, given the way the society is, you just kind of, you're not compelled, but you're at least driven to being exposed to it. And therefore, what's on it is a kind of involvement in your private space, but at a more remote step. It's at this point that values become difficult and decisions become difficult. However, my own bias, at least, would be against, I think the burden of proof has to be on anyone who wants to introduce any form of regulation, in my opinion.